So that was the NDP leader in front of the House of Commons earlier today. And to talk about this, we're now joined by our weekly strategy panel. Susan Smith is the co-founder and principal of Blue Sky Strategy Group. Jordan Paquet is a senior consultant with that same firm. And Anne McGrath is the principal secretary to the NDP leader. Hello to the three of you.
Hello.
Hi, Michael.
Hello, Michael.
So, we have to start with Jagmeet Singh because clearly what he has stated here today is very different than what we heard from Elizabeth May the other day. Because Elizabeth May, when she saw the unredacted report, she said that it did not list any current MP as wittingly helping foreign states, and what it does list falls short of what could be considered as being disloyal to Canada. So why the disconnect, do you think?
I think Mr. Singh is picking and choosing what he wants to lean on when it comes to a news conference. He had a feisty news conference. He's going to get headlines today out of this. It seems that his party is in the clear. He was asked if he would expel any MPs from his party. He's leaned hard on Mr. Poilievre, but I think he's just picking and choosing what he can lean on. Elizabeth May said there is no list in the unredacted version, yet the redacted version claims there is something to this effect. It's a bit confusing to me, but the thing that struck me the most actually was how hard he leaned on Mr. Poilievre and the fact that he has not taken the responsibility to get the security clearance to review it, and that there's clearly been foreign interference in 2 Conservative leadership campaigns. We don't know if one of them was his. So there's a bit of dodgeball going on there with Mr. Poilievre, and I was surprised at how terse Mr. Singh is. It's not his usual tone.
Mm-hmm. And we will talk about getting access to it a little bit later on. But, Jordan, and important to note, of course, we've not seen the unredacted version, so we're talking a bit in the dark here. But when you listen to Elizabeth May and you listen to the NDP leader, what do you think of that disconnect?
Well, it's like they read 2 completely different reports. And I think if the other party leaders read the reports as well and came out, you'd probably get 3 other different versions of what was contained in it. I think, to Susan's point, I think there is some picking and choosing about what's important, what people actually want to focus on within it, which just goes to the overall process and how important it is to get these proper documents through the judicial inquiry that's currently happening. And that's why it was important that the opposition parties really forced this from the beginning when the government wasn't taking it seriously. So I think there is a process in place. I think it's important to continue through that. I think, if RCMP CSIS did see glaring issues in certain leadership races, they would have approached the parties. To my knowledge, from people I talked to, they haven't. So I guess, we'll see what happens from here.
Mm-hmm. Anne, what do you make of this?
Well, I listened to both of the news conferences, obviously, and what struck me, and you're right, like I have not read the unredacted report, but I did read the redacted report. And when I heard Ms. May's news conference yesterday, it sounded a little bit like the unredacted report was completely different than the redacted report, which makes no sense at all. I mean, if the redacted report, the one that's public that everybody can read, says that, Mr. Singh was actually quoting from it there, witting and unwitting, participants in this. Mm-hmm. In our parliament, that we have parliamentarians who are participating in this, and they know that that's what they're doing. So we already know that. And you can know that without reading the unredacted report. So I'm not surprised, really, by what he had to say about that.
Yeah, well, and clearly, for Elizabeth May to say that she's relieved, and then to hear the Jagmeet Singh say that he is more alarmed now, it does lead to a lot of head scratching. Although the fact is that Elizabeth May has seen the unredacted report because she's gone to get the security clearance to have it. Jagmeet Singh has read the unredacted report because he's gone through the process of getting the security clearance to do it. But Pierre Poilievre is still refusing to do so. So what is the impact of his refusal? Can he really be a critic of this process without getting access, as all the other leaders are now doing?
No, I don't think he can. And I think the longer he goes without getting the security clearance for this particular issue, the more it's going to hurt him. He looks like he's being irresponsible. He looks like, as Mr. Singh said, he's putting party before country. And no member of parliament should put party before country, and no leader should put party before country. And I think it's the responsibility of all of the leaders to get their clearance so that they can make sure that their parties are clean, clear, and the people who are sitting with them in caucus are clean and clear. So I think Mr. Poilievre is digging in so he can feign. There's some stuff he doesn't want to see clearly, and he can say, well, I haven't seen it, so he can chirp on about it. But I think sooner or later the pressure's going to be on him to have a good look at it. I don't know whether he'll succumb. He's a bit stubborn in this particular case. But the longer he goes, the less responsible he looks and the less leader-like he looks.
Jordan?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I mean, it was the Conservatives that initially pushed for some of this process. And we have to remember that. The government really just tried to sweep it under the rug from day one. So Jagmeet Singh's predecessor, Tom Mulcair, came out this afternoon and said if he was opposition leader, he wouldn't get the briefing because it's going to limit what he can say. You don't want to have an opposition leader in a particular environment where then they're limited for what they can go on and talk about in public and criticize the government on. From Elizabeth May's press conference yesterday, she said she had to coordinate statements with the PCO. That's not something that I think we really want to put our leaders in the position of doing, and coordinating with the PMO, with the bureaucratic branch of government, trying to wash over what they're saying.
With PMO, if it's PCO, it's related to national security, and I will give Mr. Singh credit for not answering the things he can't, but I think he danced around the few things. The big difference between Elizabeth May and Jagmeet Singh is Elizabeth May has, with all due respect, no reasonable chance, not a hope in hell, of being the next prime minister. Jagmeet Singh has a particular axe to grind. He thinks he can pick off Polyev. He thinks he can, tar Mr. Trudeau going forward with this. So he has a motivation for a selective interpretation of what he's seeing. Elizabeth May can be a bit more nuts and boltsy about things. They're both lawyers. I think they have legal and ethical standards they have to adhere to as lawyers as well. So I'm inclined to go with Ms. May's version of things.
Anne?
I think this has got to be a really uncomfortable position for many Conservatives right now, because I think that it's very hard to sustain this position. It is completely irresponsible, and as Jagmeet Singh said, disqualifying for somebody who wants to be the leader and who wants to be prime minister to refuse to get the information that would allow him to deal with any issues that exist within his party. And it is quite clearly putting yourself and your party ahead of the country. And I think that is really, it is disqualifying.
Yeah, well, he says that, the Conservative leader. Jagmeet Singh also said that Trudeau has essentially not taken responsibility here and has not acted quickly enough. It's something that we heard from the media reports when the year began. It's something that hurt the Liberal Party, the Liberal government, as the year began. Does this conclusion threaten to hurt the government even more, Susan?
I don't think so. I think what the government is saying is it's up to RCMP, law enforcement, and CSIS to follow up on the things that need to be followed up with. I don't think we want to create a scenario like in a Trump previous U.S. where he was trying to influence what was going on in the judicial process or meddling in the Justice Department. That's not how we operate in Canada. If there are things where the law has been broken, that's up to our law enforcement people to do that. That's what Canadians trust in our legal process. So I think the Prime Minister is taking the right approach. People would be screaming if there was any perception of Canadian political interference in the foreign political interference accusations if there's something that crosses the legal line.
Okay. Jordan?
Yeah, no, look, there is a process established. And to be fair, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives were the ones that pushed for this inquiry. Again, what I was saying before, when government was trying to sweep it under the rug. So let's give them some credit there with that and actually, going through these steps. So I think, the proper part is now not have all the party leaders just come out and read the report and come out and give their own interpretation of it. Let's actually let the experts do the work. Let's let the Justice Hogue inquiry go through, look at it, call witnesses, call whoever they need to, and come to those conclusions appropriately. And this has to happen before the next election, because right now there is a bit of a cloud hanging over people's heads, and it's because of the government response. So we have to clear the air so that Canadians do have trust in the system going forward.
Anne,
I will point out that the NDP, Jagmeet Singh and the NDP were calling for a public inquiry from the very beginning, and as a matter of fact said that David Johnston should step down when it became clear that he had such close ties to the Trudeau family and the Liberal government, and called immediately for a public inquiry and pushed very hard for it. But I do think that there is enough that we know. I think that action should be taken, and I think that's the problem. So, for instance, there's a whole section in the public report about the nomination that happened in Don Valley North, and it doesn't appear that there has been anything progressing on that. So I agree that there needs to be investigation and potentially prosecution and all of those kinds of things. But generally speaking, when it becomes known that there's an issue, this or other issues, you ask people to step aside and while their name is either cleared or something happens with it. And if there are other people in the Liberal Liberal MPs that are involved in this, they should be asked to step aside. Same with the Conservatives.
Even Dick Fadden, who's the former CSIS director, has said names should not be named because intelligence can be wrong and there needs to be a proper investigation. I would want a proper investigation to take place. If there are firm conclusions, then people should step aside. But if the immediate, partial or temporary stepping aside of something like that immediately tars and feathers people to a point they can never recover from, even if their names have been cleared. So I think if law enforcement is doing its job, I trust that our law enforcement is doing its job, that they've seen what they need to see in this report, and that we're protecting, from a national security perspective, our methods and tactics for tracking these things. The minute you start outing this stuff, you shut down any opportunity to continue to track it. So I think we have to do something about it, but we need to do something responsibly that doesn't jeopardize our national security, does not smear people's reputations if in the end something is unfounded, and we get to a responsible Canadian path for dealing with this.
Is that a finding of facts through the Hogue Commission, though?
Well, it could be, but the thing with the Hogue Commission is, if things are under national security, you're not going to be able to hear it all anyway. If there is a list of MPs that Jagmeet is sort of suggesting, but Elizabeth May is saying there isn't, the commissioner is not going to read out or publish that list of names. That jeopardizes national security. That is without a proper RCMP investigation. If after an investigation people's names need to be named, hurry up. Name it. Do the investigation, get it done properly, name those names. But let's follow due process. It's Canada.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. But look, let's get it on with quickly. Instead of just arguing who's reading the report, who's going to get the clearance, let's get it into the proper hands so they can review it. And then RCMP will lay charges. If it is, as Mr. Singh said this afternoon, traitorous behavior by certain MPs, make sure the RCMP has it, and they'll make the determination whether to lay the charges. I think that is an appropriate path to go here. But it has to happen quickly, and it has to happen before the next election. It's been way too slow so far, so we just have to ramp up this process with the Hogue inquiry.
I think right now, too, there is a cloud of suspicion, and it is particularly, I think, on certain, definitely I think a lot of racialized Canadians feel that, and I bet that that's the same case in the House of Commons, right? I think that there are, and we know from testimony at the Hogue Commission and other things that many Chinese Canadians, Asian Canadians, South Asian Canadians do feel that. They feel not only the suspicion, but they also feel the actual direct impacts of foreign interference, threats to their families back home, even to the point of the allegation that the Indian government was involved in killing a Canadian citizen on Canadian soil.
Okay. Well, story far from over, another chapter, but really appreciate the time that I've had with three of you, Susan, Jordan, and Anne. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Thanks, man.